This is the Enrique de Malacca Theater. It was created by none other than Tatay Kidlat Tahimik. This theater is somewhere along Baguio. I was supposed to try to find a statue of Enrique de Malacca, but there's none near me. So I make do with this theater. We will look into the life of Enrique de Malacca. Enrique de Malacca is one of the voyagers that actually joined Magellan. We're going to look into his life and try to find further details. Let's look into his life. His life is just like a movie, and it is something worth telling. Our story begins with a 14-year-old boy, and he was purchased as a slave somewhere in Malacca. The one that purchased him is none other than Ferdinand Magellan. Ferdinand Magellan gave him the name of Enrique, Enrique de Malacca. After all, he was purchased in Malacca. Going back to Ferdinand Magellan, we have to talk about him because he was given a task to find another route going to the Spice Islands. Spain cannot go to the Spice Islands because the world was divided by two. It's called the Treaty of Tordesillas. I'm not sure if I pronounced that one right though. So Spain can no longer reach the Spice Island by traveling eastwards. However, everyone knew that the world was round, or a sphere. So he decided to find another route going to the Spice Islands, but they have to go west. Magellan was given 5 ships by none other than King Charles I. Those 5 ships will go by the name of Trinidad, San Antonio, Victoria, Concepcion, and Santiago. Unfortunately, from the start, it's almost like a disaster for one simple reason. Magellan is a Portuguese, and his crew are all Spaniards. Mutiny was brewing even before the trip began. However, this did not stop Magellan. This expedition must go on. After all, it was him that actually presented it to King Charles. At this stage, the 14-year-old boy is now a man. He is proficient in 3 languages. One is Portuguese, one is Spanish, and of course, Malay. He might even know more because Malay is a bit diverse. There are different Malayan dialects. We'll get to that one later. For languages he doesn't understand, he make use of his hands like gestures. Something that's going to be handy later on. At this point in time, Ferdinand Magellan might already be a father figure to him. Because later in the voyage, he proven time and time again that he was loyal to Magellan. After all, he was taken when he was only 14 years of age. Of course, an adult will turn into a father figure. Let's take a look on the type of ships that they're going to be using. It's going to be called the Karak ship, and it's not the galleon. It is fortunate that we know what it looks like. It has three sails in the back and two main sails in the front for steering. It also has a cross on the sail. There's even a rowboat right in the middle of the deck. It is still a large ship, make no mistake. This one does not exactly have a crest. We are protecting ships from piracy, of course. Not to mention, Spain and Portugal are at odds with each other. The moment they see the other ship, they're going to use the cannons almost immediately. It's 3 stories high, and just like any ship, like I mentioned earlier, it will have cannons. You're going to see barrels, water barrels. These barrels are not exactly hygienic. That's why they have to mix it with alcohol. They call it grog. That alcohol may be rum, but it's water and alcohol. So the alcohol will disinfect the water. It has a stern and it's pointed upwards. Now, the rowboats are there on the deck for one simple reason. There are 5 ships in this voyage. You cannot just deliver a letter by creating a paper plane and throwing it to the other person. Sometimes they even have to transport goods between the ships. So those rowboats are going to be a necessity. Of course, there's going to be bail for scrubbing the decks, multiple ropes for hoisting the mast, and there you have it. This is a Karak ship. This is a Karak ship, and it should not be confused with a galleon ship. This is the best model I can find. I do apologize, so put a little grain of salt in case it's not that accurate. We return back to the voyage itself. The fleet of Magellan made a few stopovers in the west coast of Africa. And from Africa, they decided to sail all the way westwards. There were some rumors about a mutiny, and we'll get to that one a little later. In fact, he received a letter that one of his captains, that's Juan de Cartagena, is planning the mutiny itself. Cartagena never saluted Magellan, even if it's the custom of all sailors to do so for your superiors. He keeps instigating things to throw Magellan out of power because he is not fit to lead anymore. And as a result, that instantly made Magellan call him a mutineer. And just like any form of mutiny, he's supposed to be executed. However, there were 2 other captains that prevented that from happening because they talked Magellan to simply put Cartagena into stocks. Being in stocks means your legs are tied down to wooden planks. I'm not sure if it's tied down or locked into place, but he will be immobile. The fleet made a stop over in this area called Rio de Janeiro. Of course, it's not its actual name back then. The locals already familiar with trading with with other people, like the Portuguese. They sometimes get some trinkets and other materials, and in return, they give something like cassava, food, and of course, drinking water. And on rare occasions, sometimes lovemaking. Enrique de Malacca is the one in charge in facilitating the trading between the Europeans and the local population. However, he cannot speak the language of the indigenous people of Brazil. So he has to make do with hand gestures and sometimes drawing, or sometimes sketching some symbols for the locals to understand. The fleet of ships will actually have to make anchor because right now it might be March, but it's actually winter in the southern hemisphere. The seas is not in your favor. There's going to be lots of storms, and they have to pull down the sails. Otherwise, it's going to be damaged. Because of the storm, many people doubt Magellan's authority. They're starting to think that Magellan is making them sail to their deaths. And this led to a mutiny. This became the start of the Easter Mutiny. On Easter Day, a group of men rebelled against Magellan. Enrique, of course, will side with his master. This is, after all, his father figure. This is the same man he was serving ever since he was a 14-year-old boy. He's not going to give up on him now. The mutiny was led by Juan de Cartagena, or Juan de Cartagena. He was freed by the two other captains, Gaspar de Quesada and Luis Mendoza. In the dead of the night, they covered their faces with soot or charcoal. They boarded San Antonio and struck swiftly. There were 30 of them, all in rowboats headed towards the ship. When they boarded the San Antonio, they ambushed Alvaro de Mesquita. He was the captain that replaced Juan de Cartagena. Remember when I mentioned Juan de Cartagena was put in stock? He was released by Gaspar de Quesada and Luis Mendoza. And now 3 of the 5 boats belong to the mutineers. Only the Trinidad and Santiago belongs to Magellan. It's like as if all is lost. However, there was a strong current that drifted one of the longboats to reach the Trinidad. When that longboat drifted near the Trinidad, Magellan, of course, took the opportunity to make sure to capture them. And they were forced to divulge all the information regarding the mutineers. The men that was loyal to Magellan disguised themselves as mutineers and rowed towards Victoria. One of them was, of course, Enrique de Malacca. Magellan and his team ambushed the mutineers. In the meantime, those loyal to Magellan actually sabotaged the mutineers by simply cutting the ropes. They cannot pull up the sails anymore. The fate of the mutineers are as follows. Luis Mendoza actually died when the team of Magellan retook the fleet. Gaspar de Quesada have to surrender. along with John of Cartagena or Juan de Cartagena. Quesada was actually beheaded by none other than Luis Molina. He acted as the executioner in exchange for clemency. The bodies of Quesada and Mendoza were drawn and quartered and displayed on gibbets, and that lasted for a good 3 months. Cartagena, with the priest Pedro Sanchez de Reina, were sentenced to be marooned. That in itself is actually a death sentence. The rest of the mutineers have to wear shackles and have to perform hard labor for the ships. And one of them will be known as Juan Sebastian Elcano. More on him later on. After the failed mutiny, Magellan instructed the captain of the Santiago, Juan Serrano, to scout the side of the Americas. They were trying to find that strait. They did found an estuary of that have good natural resources like fish, drinking water, and wood for repairs. Not to mention there were some penguins. Antonio Pigafetta, the chronicler, described the penguins as geese. They were easy to catch and tasted good. Despite the discovery, disaster struck. The Santiago was stuck in a sandbar. All the men survived, however, they were stuck in this estuary. Some of them have to walk up north to find their main host. And once they reached the Magellan party, Magellan decided to sail downwards or southwards in order to rescue the team of Juan Serrano. However, they are now down to 4 ships. No more Santiago. They were eventually able to find a strait that reaches the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. Magellan names this strait as the Strait of Todos los Santos. Later, it will be known as the Strait of Magellan. They decided to see the different areas and they decided to split up. However, there's another mutiny. This time, it's a successful one. This is on board of the San Antonio. Alvaro de Mesquita was actually the captain of that ship, but was overpowered by one of his subordinates, Estavio Gomez. After being overpowered, the ship just simply deserted and returned to Spain. However, exploring finally bare its fruit. They were able to reach the other side of the strait and they saw a vast ocean. It was calm and peaceful. Therefore, Magellan gave it the name of Mar Pacifico. We know it today as the Pacific Ocean. It may have been peaceful sailing in the Pacific Ocean, however, they underestimated the size of the Pacific Ocean. When they were sailing, their provisions was running out. They lacked food, clean water, and sooner or later, they're running on empty. To give a little context on the size of the Pacific Ocean, it's 5 times wider than the moon. With supplies running low, they are starting to get desperate. To make things worse, there were some rats that actually got to their food sources. And the rats defecated on their food. As an alternative, they decided to eat the rats. When hunger strikes, you really have no choice but to obey it. When sailing the Pacific, they did actually run to some islands, but those islands are not exactly usable. It it cannot even provide any provision for them. This went on until they finally saw an island worth inspecting. This is the island of Guam, and in this place they also met the indigenous Chamorro people. Enrique de Malacca now have the task of trying to communicate with them. He is, after all, the interpreter. However, he cannot understand them because he's not from this area. There could have been some miscommunication between the natives and, of course, the fleet. The natives started taking almost everything off the deck. They took knives, rigging, ropes, and, of course, a boat. Magellan did not like this. He sent a raiding team to collect the goods back. As a result, 7 men died. They even burned houses and the huts. It wasn't a good deal for the Chamorro people. Because of the bad experience, Magellan now calls this island the Island of Thieves. After the disastrous resupply, they decided to set sail again. This time, you may have guessed it, they reached the Philippines. They did not exactly go directly to an island called Cebu. They made a first stop. They were in a place called the Homohon Island. It was deserted, but they did encounter some locals in a nearby island. They traded and they were able to gather food and, most importantly, the fresh water. They also encountered the island of Limasawa and they noticed that they were in canoes called the Balanghay. And for the first time, Enrique de Malacca can speak to them in Malay. This might be an exciting time for Enrique. This is a language that he spoken as a boy, and now he's using it again. This must be something that he truly cherished. The good thing is, this must be a relief. Finally, he can speak and people can understand him. Now, I'm not going to claim that everyone in this area knows how to speak Malay. There's multiple dialects in all those islands. But sometimes dialects is already good enough for men to understand some of your words. You just have a different way of saying things. Now, Malay is also a common language when doing some trades. So it is possible that the locals also speak Malay, but only those that trade a lot. Now, kings, rahas, will have knowledge on different types of languages, including Malay. If they cannot understand Malay, they will have a translator for them. Because of Enrique, they were able to talk properly with the local rahas. Rahas are actually kings. Because of this, they were actually treated kindly. Having a Malay in your team is already a good sign. Some of the rahas actually converted to Christianity, supposed to go to Moluccas, or in this case Malacca. However, Magellan decided to push further, and sooner or later he reaches the island of Cebu. This is where he met Raha Humabon. At first, the Raha demanded tribute. However, Magellan declined it. He decided to waive his tribute, and instead he showed a demonstration of what Spanish arms can do, from shields to cannons to muskets. Zaraha was actually impressed. In fact, he also converted to Catholicism. Some other locals also converted to Catechism. In fact, he even gave the statue of the baby Jesus to the wife of Raha Humabon. Later, it will be known that the statue given to the family will be known as Santo Niño de Cebu. Now, not all the natives are actually into Christianity. There's one person in particular named Lapu Lapu. Raha Humabon actually claimed that Lapu Lapu can be a bit of an enemy and mentioned to Magellan that he refused to convert to Christianity. Upon hearing this, Magellan sent an envoy, but Lapu-Lapu still declined to be Christian. This led to the epic Battle of Mactan. The Karak ships have cannons. However, it cannot reach the shore. During that time, it was actually the low tide. And having the ship be dragged into a sandbank is disastrous. So Magellan actually have to muster a force of 60 armed men. 11 of them will have to guard the boats. Magellan's team fired heavily on the natives. They used muskets and crossbows. However, the natives are actually also armed with shields. The shields are made out of wood, but they're not any ordinary wood. It is the hardest wood in the Philippines. It can easily be deflected, and sometimes the distance is enough for the natives to simply evade the fire. Magellan now have to resort to burning some houses. It worked in the past when they were in Guam. So should it work in this area as well? Unfortunately, this only enraged the natives. The natives outflanked the team of Magellan. They were severely outnumbered. There's only 60 men over 1,500 natives. They were easily overwhelmed and it really turned ugly. I'll also spare you the details of how Magellan died. Whatever it is Enrique saw that time, it must be horrifying. His mentor, his father figure, is now brutalized and now have passed away. After Magellan's death, an election was made. This election will actually choose the next three ship captains. Duarte Barbosa, which is Magellan's brother-in-law, Juan Serrano, and Juan Sebastian Elcano. If you recall, Juan Sebastian Elcano was a mutineer, or one of the mutineers that actually tried to overthrow Magellan. Before Magellan died, he gave specific instructions that once he dies, Enrique de Malacca should be set free. However, the captains refused this request. They believe Enrique de Malacca is too important to be set free because they still require his service. This may have angered Enrique de Malacca. He was supposed to be set free. He obeyed his master's wishes, but these three people does not even want to obey it. One of them is even a mutineer, the one who betrayed his master. This is the part of the story where it's going to get controversial. He said something to Raha Humabon, something that will make him change his views towards the team of Magellan. On May the 1st, Raha Humabon invited all the officers for a banquet. They can also nurture to their wounds and probably grief as well. However, this is not what happened. While they were feasting, they were ambushed. And out of 30 men, only 3 survived. Make that 2 survive. One is Juan Serrano, and the other one is Enrique de Malacca. Juan Serrano was made to face the ships and plead for his life. He was pleading for the ships to give Zaraha the ransom. Unfortunately, no one was loyal to Juan Serrano, and the ship simply fled. Enrique de Malacca was unharmed during this ordeal. This was the last time Enrique de Malacca was mentioned in history. After that, he was never heard from again. Whatever he said to Zaraha may have contributed to the May 1st massacre. However, I cannot blame him. This is the closest he'll ever get to his home, and he's about to be set free. Some say he is the first person to circumnavigate the world because he was able to reach home. Of course, there's still 2,500 kilometers between Cebu and Malacca. The first person to circumnavigate the world is just a bragging right. I don't even think he cares about this. The one thing he truly cares about is that he served his master well. He is now free, and he can finally go home. I did a lot of research when making this video. However, I am just human and sometimes inaccurate. If I said something that may not be factual, feel free to make a comment. Thanks for watching.